Call to order Georgetown-Scott County Planning Commission, November 14, 2019. Approval of our October invoices. I need a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Mifflin. Second by Mr. Caldwell. Sorry, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Approve or disapprove. Sorry, my mouth. Approval of October 10, 2019 minutes. You should have a copy of that in your packet. I'll need a motion to approve those.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Smith
Second.
and a second by Mr. Stone. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? C on the agenda is the approval of the November agenda. Joe, we don't have any changes at this point, correct?
No.
So no changes. So I need approval of the agenda.
Make a motion to approve today's agenda.
Okay, a motion by Mr. Moran,
Second.
second by Mr. Smith. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Items for postponement or withdrawal. Nothing, Joe? Everything's good? Okay. And then consent agenda, we've got two that are eligible. Technically, we have three, I'm sure, but wouldn't the Bluegrass Campground be? No, it's not. Okay. So the one, Devers Property FSP 2019-41, final subdivision plat to subdivide a 5.01 acre lot from a parent tract of 33.9 acres located north of 1345 White Oak Road. Is there anybody against or in favor or want to hear that one heard tonight? If not, that'll be consent eligible. We'll vote probably on both together. Second one is FSP 2019-42 Snowball Trust Property. Final subdivision plat to divide one tract into four tracts, creating three 5.01 acre tracts and a 32 acre remainder tract located at 4476 Frankfurt Road. Anybody here against that or even in favor of or want to hear it? Okay, so we've got two that are consented eligible. I need them.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we accept FSP 2019-41 and FSP 2019-42 by consent.
So we've got a motion by Mr. Smith,
Second.
second by Mr. Wiseman. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? For the record, Mrs. Mizell, or Commissioner Mizell, is not here tonight. And then, Charlie, before we get started, would you swear everybody in?
Could you ask the people on these two that went consent to come up and sign
Yes.
the conditions?
So if you're here for the Devers property or the Snowball Trust property, please go up and see Charlie, and he'll have you sign some documents. Thank you.
There.
And then after they're done, we'll have everyone sworn in.
Or we can do that.
You want to do the swearing in? Okay. if you're-
Everyone signed in to speak. If you can stand, raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm the statement you make tonight to be the truth, to the best of your information and belief? Thank you.
All right, so let's get started here. ZMA 2019-43 Bevan zone change. Zone change for 7.46 acres from an A5 to B2, located at New Coleman Lane, west of Mead Tractor. And this is a public hearing, so we'll have to open this as a public hearing. Correct, Charlie?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Like the chair said, this is a zone change for 7.46 acres from A5, which is our rural residential zoning district, to B2 highway commercial. The property is located with access off New Coleman Lane, and it is adjacent to the Mead Tractor Supply. I can see if I can. Oh, sorry. There we go. So with access off of New Coleman Lane here, this is a 7.46 acre project site, and then this is the Mead Tractor Supply site that was rezoned to B2 highway commercial in 2013. Here is Lexington Road. Just to give you an idea, also a little bit more background, this 53 acre area here was rezoned to A5 rural residential in 2016. This also just gives you an aerial view to give you a better understanding of what we're looking at. Again, meat tractor supply here, and this is the 7.46 acre project site. Just to briefly go over the concept plan that was submitted, they're proposing access again off of New Coleman Lane with a gravel drive. They're proposing for the entire site to be laid down with gravel to provide outdoor storage for meat tractor supply. To try and orient you here, New Coleman Lane is here, Lexington Road is here, and then meat tractor supply is here. There is an existing gravel drive here that connects the two properties, the meat tractor supply and the project site. So essentially they are proposing to just use the entire site for outdoor storage. That is a conditional use in the B2 zoning district. So if the zone change were approved and they were to go ahead with this project, they would have to go to the Board of Adjustment to get approval for that use. They are proposing to put a security gate around the site and a 15-foot landscape buffer. Currently, sewer is not available on this site. GMWSS indicated that there's no ability to have future development hook onto the sewer for this 7.46 acre site. So for the foreseeable future, this would have to be served by septic. All right, so the findings required for a zone change are dictated by state statute. I'm going to briefly run through them all. There's the first part, and then there's 1A and 1B, so we'll kind of run through them and see if any of them apply. So the first part is before any map amendment is granted, the Planning Commission must find that the map amendment is in agreement with the adopted comprehensive plan, or in the absence of such a finding, that one or more of the following apply. So I'm going to briefly go through it. So this is a picture of our future land use map. So as you can see, this is the green belt that's designed as essentially a transition period or a transition area to our urban service boundary, which is just to the north here. So that's where all anticipated future development and growth, commercial growth, etc., is planned for the city of Georgetown. Here's the southern part of the county. This is the project site here. As you can see, essentially all of it is planned for agricultural, aside from this small area here, which is planned for future commercial. It's essentially developed as commercial and industrial now. But just to give you an idea, so the comp plan, you kind of look at two aspects when you're seeing if it's in compliance or not. The first is the future land use map, which, as you can see, it's not indicating that this area is planned for commercial development in the future. It's also an area of prime farmland. So sorry if the map's a little bit hard to see, but this area that's shaded here, you can see, is designated as prime farmland by the USDA. This is the project site here. One of the goals of the comprehensive plan is to protect prime farmland, so that's one of the many reasons that we see that area to the southern part of the county as being planned for agricultural, rural type uses rather than the commercial designation that the applicant is requesting. So this is again part one, just saying that the map amendment is in agreement with the adopted comprehensive plan. So we did go over the future land use map, and it is not supported by that. Commercial zoning south of the Greenbelt weakens the boundary between urban and rural land uses. This is something that the comprehensive plan stresses over and over, that we are trying to keep growth within the urban service boundaries that have been designated around Georgetown, Sadieville, and Stamping Ground. Also, the following goals and objectives oppose the zoning map amendment, and there are no goals or objectives in the most recently adopted comprehensive plan that support this application. So again, it's to preserve prime farmland for agricultural uses, which you do find that prime farmland in the southern part of the county, and also ensure adequate public facilities and services are available to meet the needs of businesses and residences. Like we said, there's no sewer capacity to serve the additional 7+ acres of the commercially zoned land that they're proposing, so we would argue that that's not having adequate infrastructure for what the applicant is requesting. So with that, I would say that part one, we do not have a finding to say that the zoning map amendment is in compliance with the comprehensive plan. So at that point, we'd move on to part 1A. Just again, to give you an overview of the zoning here. So that is the B2 designation, the A5, this is the project site. And you can see the majority of land around it is zoned A1, which is our agricultural designation. So Part 1A states that the existing zoning classification given to the property is inappropriate and that the proposed zoning classification is appropriate. So what they're requesting is B2 highway commercial. And I guess to go back over the background, I'll follow my slideshow here. The applicant requested and was approved for a rezoning from A1 to A5 in 2016. As I stated before, the current zoning would fall within what we consider an agricultural use that the future land use map supported. So within the past 3 years, the applicant identified that the A5 zoning district is the appropriate designation for this area. Within that time frame, there have not been any changes in the area that would make the current A5 zoning inappropriate. The A5 zoning district allows for a variety of land uses between those listed as permitted and conditional, including but not limited to single-family residences, keeping of forage, consuming grazing animals, production of agricultural or horticultural crops, home businesses, small daycares, bed and breakfasts, churches, etc., based on the information here and in the zoning ordinance. Further, staff has analyzed all the properties within a 1/2 mile of the project site and found there are 77 parcels of land that are zoned A1 or A5 and equal to or smaller than the lot in question. This shows that it's completely appropriate for there to be parcels of this size with the A1 or A5 zoning designation, and that these parcels are used for a variety of uses, and staff is not aware of there being any issues where these owners or these properties have been deprived of a reasonable use of the land. So again, we find that Part 1A does not apply, that the current zoning designation is appropriate based on, again, the plan, the comprehensive plan that has been in place, the future land use map that has been done, and I believe this has been planned agricultural since zoning has been around in the county. And then finally, we go to Part 1B, that there have been major changes of an economic, physical, or social nature within the area involved, which were not anticipated in the adopted comprehensive plan, and which have substantially altered the basic character of such area. The comprehensive plan was adopted, the most recent comprehensive plan was adopted in 2016. The Mead Tractor Supply zone change that you see, that B2 highway commercial that's adjacent to the project site, was done in 2013. So that zone change was considered when the most recent comprehensive plan was adopted. There have been no major changes within a 1/2 mile of the project site since the adoption of the most recent comprehensive plan. No changes of an economic, physical, or social nature have occurred. All the currently existing land uses either existed or had received Planning Commission approval prior to the adoption of the most recently adopted comprehensive plan. And there have not been any changes to infrastructure, road, water, sewer, etc. in the area that have occurred since the most recent adopted comprehensive plan that would apply to this designation. So we also find that Part 1B does not apply. So at that point, going through the 3 findings that are necessary for a zone change based on state statute, staff finds that there are no findings that are applicable to recommend approval of this zone change amendment, so staff's recommending denial. I'm not sure if there are any questions for me or.
Any questions for Michaela?
Yes.
Sure.
If Mr. Bevins still owned the farm supply and this piece of property, would he have had to have come before us to store additional equipment back there?
If it was zoned A1 or.
Mr. Bevins had this property changed and built the farm supply store there and owned the piece of property that we're now talking about.
Yeah.
And if he still owned the tractor supply, would he be coming before us for a zone change, or would he still be able to park extra equipment back there?
On the A5, on the project site?
Yes.
The current zoning of the project site doesn't allow for outdoor storage for a commercial type purpose, which is what the applicant's requesting to do. So it's not a permissible or conditional use in the A5 zoning district. It's a conditional use in the B2 zoning district. Staff did make the interpretation that based on the use that he's requesting, it would need to be B2. Otherwise, he would need to use the property in an appropriate fashion for the A5 zoning district. So for rural residential type uses, which include agricultural or single-family
Yeah,
residential.
I understand that, but what I'm saying is,
Yeah.
did he separate that at the time that he moved out there, moved the farm supply out there? I guess is what I'm asking.
Yeah.
That's all it was.
You know, you can answer. Okay, I don't think I
Joe,
do.
you may want to go to microphone because
Yeah.
I noticed we listened to recording last month. We couldn't catch everybody.
I think he still does own both properties. He leases the Meade site, but
Right.
I think what you're asking is could he still use the A1 property to store equipment if he was
Yeah,
owned
if it was
But,
still Bevan
he,
Supply.
He couldn't use it for commercial purposes. If he could store his own equipment if he was farming the land or farming the adjoining property.
Gotcha.
He could for his own purpose, but not commercially store.
Okay, that's what I was wanting to know.
Thanks, Joe.
And I know it's out of our hands, but just south of that property, just south of Josie's, I realize is in Fayette County. Do we know what's being built on that corner of Ironworks and US 25?
I had heard it's a Dollar General. Did you? I'd heard that, but I'm not
So
100%
again,
positive.
that's a B2 down there.
That's true. Yes,
Okay,
there's commercial property on the Fayette County side
Right.
of the line.
and
Yeah,
so, and then Michaela, on part 1B, states that there have been major changes of an economic and physical nature. So by putting Meade Supply in there, that doesn't change that? That's not a major or economic change to the
That
area?
was done prior to the most recent adopted comprehensive plan.
Uh-huh.
So the way that the phrasing is for state statute is any recent changes that have occurred after the most recent adopted comprehensive plan. So that zone change occurred in 2013, so it's not applicable for this finding. I don't know how else to answer that.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's,
Okay. We can go briefly over some of the zoning here. Most of the B2 zoning that you see in the southern part of the county, they were given that zoning designation at the time that the zoning ordinance was first adopted back in the 70s, was
72.
it? 72. It's usually based on what the existing use was. That's how it was generally done when zoning was first adopted. The only two zone changes that have occurred since 2002 are the Dwyer property. That was changed from B1 to B2, so it was originally designated as B1, and it was approved. I can't remember the year. Was it 2002? It was, yeah, in 2002 for the Dwyer property to be rezoned from B1 to B2, and then the Meade Tractor Supply that you see adjacent to the project site. Going back over the findings and the file for the 2013 zone change, it seems that it was primarily done as it was viewed as an agricultural need. At the time, it was stated that the project site was sufficient to handle the business operations for the Meade Tractor Supply that was stated in it. What the applicant is proposing is nearly doubling the project site here. We would be looking at 17 acres of B2 highway commercial in the southern part of the county. That's a pretty big lot. I think Kroger's about that size. Walmart's about that size. The Planet Fitness lot's about that size. So, yeah.
Any other questions for Ms. Michaela? Thank you.
Yep.
Would the applicant come up and speak, please?
Yeah, that's good.
He can't see that far, Bruce.
Mr. Chairman, Planning Commission, I'm Bruce Lankford, and I'm here with Mr. Bevins and Jared Stevens, the engineer who drew the concept plan. First of all, Charlie, did you get your answer?
Charlie.
yes, thank you.
You understand?
Understand, yep.
Okay. Michaela gives a detailed report. She always does, and she does a good job. And we respect that report. And we agree with her 90% of the time. Maybe 10% we don't agree. So she's directed 90%, misdirected maybe 10%. But we still respect that misdirection. No mistake about that. These people do a good job. 7.46 acres. It's all Mr. Bevins has at this site that's not being used. Meade Tractor is being used. He leases to Meade Tractor. The 7.46 acres was cut off of 53 acres. So that was a large agricultural tract, but he sold about 43 acres to Mr. Willoughby, who is now building a house on it. That had been planned for A5, agricultural A5, but didn't come to fruition because there were conditions that Mr. Bevan couldn't live with on that condition. So he kept the 7.46 acres for his own use. It's correct that the property is bounded on the south by Pratt's Lawn Care Business. It's bounded on the east by Tractor Supply Business, Meade Tractor Supply Business. It's bounded on the north and northeast by Church Properties, who are doing the Lord's business. It's bounded on the north by Coleman Lane. It's bounded on the west by this large agricultural tract. Now, she had the drawing up there a minute ago, and you can see that really on three sides of the property, we're talking about business, business, and the Lord's business. This property will not be used by Mr. Bevan agriculturally. It's too small, 7.46 acres. It will not be used residentially. Totally inappropriate. Would you want to build a house there? He proposes to lease to Meade Tractor Supply for outside storage so that they can grow their agriculturally rated business. You notice I said grow. The most appropriate use we submit, with all due respects to the planning staff, is the proposed use. It's located south of what I call, or what I consider, or what I hope you consider, the green space area. From Coleman Lane, basically back to Georgetown, that's the green space area. The other side of Coleman Lane, very little green space. This is only 7 acres of it. We propose a 15-foot buffer and a 6-foot security fence. Outdoor storage, as Michaela said, will need a conditional use permit. Typical B2 uses are not at all appropriate. Typical B2 uses are not at all appropriate. I'm sure you will agree this is not a site for a restaurant, a service station, a motel, or anything that's like that as a B2 use. Outdoor storage is a use with a conditional use permit. Meade Tractor Supply is a good citizen that wants to grow. It's family-owned John Deere dealership. Stores in Kentucky, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia. He's got 21 locations, 16 in Kentucky. He has 30 employees at this location. Annual payroll of more than $2 million. Services all of Scott County and surrounding counties. Meade Tractor Supply was built in 2013 as a state-of-the-art facility. They host company-wide meetings at this location. Representatives, employees from all the surrounding states at some time or another attend meetings there. Those meetings estimated to spend $50,000 in the area while they're here. Pays property tax in excess of $30,000. Sales tax in excess of $1 million. This is a good citizen. This is a citizen that wants to grow by using this property for outdoor storage. What are you going to base it upon? A finding that this property is no longer appropriate agriculturally and no longer appropriate residentially. AR. It's appropriate for the use we propose, though. If this use is approved, I'll submit to you, it will have no noticeable impact whatsoever on the Greenbelt, which basically is Kentuckiana and Hillcrest Farm, Lanes Run, and Cannon or Quarles Farm. It'll have no impact on it. It's 7 acres. It'll have no impact whatsoever. To say that it would is really frivolous. The property is a part of a much larger commercially used and developed area. You know the area. I don't have to describe it. You're all familiar with it. Urban services are not needed for storage, for outdoor storage. No urban services are planned for this property. There are other B2 zoned properties in close proximity, and there are other non-conforming commercial uses. Mr. Bevins will not use this property for agricultural or residential use. We submit it's entirely appropriate that it be used for outdoor storage. And that's what we ask that you find. Take your questions.
Any questions for Mr. Langford? Thank you, Mr. Langford.
Reserve the right to respond if I have to.
Okay, thank you. Anybody want to speak on behalf of this project or against? Please come up and state your name.
I'm Kyle Fannin. I'm the pastor at Bluegrass Baptist Church. Apparently, according to Mr. Langford, we're doing the Lord's business, and we appreciate that. Some of you remember us from 2015. We filed for a B2 use on our property. We had an offer from Sunbelt Rentals to buy it, and we were told as a church no. We disagreed with the decision, went to the magistrates, disagreed there, lost in both conditions. We believe, in fact, from that, as a pastor representing 200 plus people in a church now, I sat on the planning for the comprehensive plan, went to many of the meetings. Everything south, what Mr. Langford said, everything south of Coleman heading towards the Fayette County line is practically all B2. And so while we agree that it's okay to zone it B2, we're not necessarily in favor one way or the other. It's not going to bother us as a church. We would ask for some consistency and some continuity in the process, and so we hope that you would weigh that consideration as you consider his application. We are slightly concerned. I think there's some gentlemen here as well from Central Church. I don't know if they're going to speak. They're the folks doing the Lord's work right next door to us, and so there's a lot of us doing it out there apparently. But the back end of Coleman Lane is heavily traveled now, much more heavily traveled than it was before, and it's probably high time that the county and the commission start looking at improving the road to county standards. I know it's recently been repaved, but that's probably another discussion for another day. I have a secondary reason. We also own the 18 acres at the corner of Ironworks in Coleman, and our bank, I don't know who that might be, our bank would probably be more happy with us if we didn't get stuck with the bill of widening Coleman Lane when we decide to build on it. And so all of these things we as a church would just ask the commission to be mindful of. We're not suggesting that Mr. Bevins needs to pay for it. I think there is probably high time for the county and the commission to stop and look at what is developing in that part of the county. Draw a line of demarcation at Coleman and say this far, no further. Build, if you will, a green belt at that point to Ironworks and let development go. Those were my suggestions during the comprehensive plan, during the small area development plan. And so for Mr. Bevins, we would support it. We would probably watch very carefully how the vote goes, and we may be talking to you again here soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor. Anybody else want to speak either against or in favor? Come on up. Please state your name and your address.
My name's Peggy Blanton, and I live on the old part of Coleman Lane, the original part of Coleman Lane. And if you think there's traffic on Coleman Lane now, you should have seen it when it went straight through. But anyway, we live there. So we like the Greenbelt idea. Zoning has changed. Our houses, you know, those little, I have a half acre. Well, you couldn't do that now. Thankfully, the planning and zoning folks changed that. So you have to have 5 acres for a septic tank. That makes a lot more sense than but that's how it was then. And Mr. Bevan kept a right-of-way between our houses because his original plan was to build apartments back behind all of our little houses. And the zoning changed, and so he couldn't do that. So we live there, I guess, is my big thing. And I know progress, but it's like a domino effect. And there's one change. If you make Coleman Lane the boundary, then it'll move into something else. So I just would like for you to consider leaving it residential as it is for those of us that live there and have lived there for a long time. I can't move now. I'd never learn a new address. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
It is hard to get out. It's very hard to get out on 25.
Come on up, Mr. Bevins.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, my name is Jimmy Bevins, and we started this project back in 2013. I talked to Chuck Mead earlier today, and Chuck was not able to make it, and he asked that I speak in behalf of Mead Tractor, which I am a major investor still in Mead Tractor and also the landlord. And the company, Mead Tractor, has prospered. And they are looking into the future. And Georgetown and Central Kentucky, Lexington, Kentucky, is a great place to be doing business. And this would enable him to grow Mead Tractor on into the future. And appreciate your consideration in looking at this evening, because it's important to Chuck, it's important to me. And it's important to a lot of people in Scott County. So thank you for your consideration and appreciate your help. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bevins.
Can I ask Mr. Bevins?
Would please come up to the microphone, no, because we record this.
No, Mr. Langford mentioned that there were reasons you didn't want that section made part of the residential. And
Right.
again, things you couldn't live with, what were
Well,
those
the thing
conditions?
is, as the property is right now, it's bordered by Mead Tractor
Mhm.
and by the
Yeah.
Pratt's Lawn Care.
Mhm.
And also then, it's just not desirable for residential use. And I wouldn't want to build a home there, and I don't know who else would either, but
The people who bought all of that,
Right.
they wanted it originally, but there were conditions you couldn't live with. What were those?
Oh, you mean from,
The people who bought the front part, what am I saying?
No, the
On
conditions.
the ironworks.
Right.
They bought all of that
Right.
except that one little section, and you said there were conditions you couldn't live with? What?
as far
To
as
make it
for them,
residential?
to make it residential?
Mhm.
I don't have any particular reason other than I didn't feel like it was suitable.
Okay, that's just.
All right.
what it is.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Anybody else want to speak either in favor or against or just to speak? We'll listen. No? Okay. Please come up to the microphone. We've got it because we record this and then we put it into minutes. So
Sorry.
state your name and your
Ida
address.
Mills. I live on the old Coleman Lane.
Okay.
And we've been impacted by the churches even. The lights keep me awake at night. If they could put dim lights in, that'd be better. But they put those big bright ones. But how big is the building going to be? Because I'll be able to
There's
see
no
it.
building.
There's no building.
It's just
a parking
Who
lot.
says?
At this point.
well, no, I don't think
If
we're.
you build it, if you make it the same as what the Tractor Supply is, they will be able to build a building there.
They would have to come back to us, correct, Jill? Yeah, so right now, we're only approving the use of the land to be used as storage, basically just the land only, no buildings at all. For them to build an additional building like what they have on the front 10 acres, they would have to come back to us with a development plan.
Will they be using New Coleman Lane a lot? Because it's very hard to get
Well,
in and out.
the map, there is one entrance off of New Coleman Lane. It's a gravel drive.
I know what it
And
is.
unfortunately, Mr. Mead's not here, but Mr. Langford, would you be able to answer that?
That access is available to be used. How much he'll use it, I have no way of knowing. Have no way of knowing, Mr. Chairman.
But they also have access through the existing Mead
Well,
property.
yes,
also.
it'll be adjacent to the existing facility. They can access it anywhere through there.
Do you know, Mr. Langford, will there be any lights on that property, the 7.46 acres, like maybe for security purposes or anything?
I would assume so. That's one
Would you
thing.
come up, Mr. Bevins? Sorry.
That's one thing that helps deter thieves
Theft.
is some lighting.
Right.
There's going to be ample screening as far as around the border of it. The lighting, I think, is always an issue. So if we can do something that's going to be friendlier to the neighborhood, that I think would stand to reason.
Thank you. And I did notice there is a security fence, it looks like, around the whole property, so
Right.
that'll help with theft, hopefully.
Right.
Well, you know how that goes. Thank you. Any other questions for anybody? From anybody?
My question, I think, we had discussed on Monday that if we were to approve this strictly for storage, is it still possible that you'd be willing to put in the restrictions or put in the conditions that if it ever ceased to be a farm equipment dealership, that it would revert back to A5? I think that was,
Yes? We would come back to the planning commission at that time, yes.
I mean, does anybody feel like that would be my concern, is that at some point that, you know, that this B2 property, if it's only being used for storage for equipment, and I'd also like an assurance from Mead that they're going to continue to be a tractor dealership and not just a construction.
Well, that's the plan. Yes, that's
If
the
they
plan.
turn into a construction dealership, then I don't think any farmer's going to be happy around here.
I think that's the basis of Mead Tractor, was Bevins Motor Company, now Mead Tractor. That's without the agricultural end of it, I don't ever see that happening.
Well, there's a
I
lot
mean,
of,
none of us have a crystal ball, but
right.
that, as far as agricultural use, and you look where it's at in the agricultural area that it services.
Right.
I mean, it's a broad area.
It is. But I'd like to make sure that it's always
Yeah,
going to be an agricultural store and doesn't
Right.
become a John Deere construction equipment store for solely. As soon as it did that, it would no longer be serving farmers, it'd be serving the development.
Steve, I don't think that would ever happen. You know,
I hope not as well.
I don't have a crystal ball. I don't.
But once the zoning's changed, you all can't dictate what can be there. If it's-
Well,
Yes,
to
we
one
can.
point, we can, to a degree. One point that Mr. Langford had that we didn't discuss on Tuesday, and I really took it into heart just now, is, you know, you got a gravel drive going to an off the beaten path property. For this to be approved as a B2, you know, you're not going to get a restaurant built back there. You're not going to get a strip club built back there, which is what my fear is in this community. I will never approve a strip club. that's not ever going to be a good place for a bank location or anything really. Gas station, perfect. You're not going to get a gas station back there.
The single best use for this property is what Mead Tractor wants to do.
Right. I think so. And just one thing I do ask is, with the lighting, I know we've had some issues with, I think we just recently discussed this with Planet Fitness has, some lights that get into neighbors. God's lights are shining in people's eyes, which is not a bad thing. But we want to help get it out of keep it a little lower. There are lights out, and we don't leave them on for you at night. I think it is the best use of the property. I did write. Anybody have any questions? I kind of jotted a statement. I wasn't on planning and zoning back in 2013, as most of us weren't. I will continue to support smart, manageable growth. If we wanted to maintain the area as agriculture, we should have considered this back in 2013 when we approved the initial Bevins property. If there was a mistake to protect this area as A5 or A1, I feel the mistake was made back in 2013. To have a successful business here in Scott County is a blessing. I want to see new businesses, new and old, all businesses, new and old, be successful here in Scott County, unlike a lot of our adjoining counties that you see these businesses fail. I think to turn down this application, it would be an insult for a successful business to expand, because after this expansion is hopefully approved or thought to be approved, this application's landlocked. They're done. So to take that into consideration, if we do approve this tonight, yes, they do grow from roughly 10 acres to about 17, but at that point, they're landlocked to go any other way. And I'd say we need to take that into consideration.
If I might address one thing, Mr. Chairman. Steve talked about if they would agree to change the zoning back. That can be their intent, and they can do it or they can not do it. We can't require that.
Can't we put any
No, we can't put that kind of post-condition on it. We can deal with this development, with this zone change. We can't then tell them what they can do to their property. They can do anything that B2 allows down the road. Now, obviously, the chair's correct. This lot standing alone is not going to be too attractive, but if, in fact, Mead changes business plans, then that 10 acres with this 7 acres, they could put anything in that B2 allows. So we don't have, once this is done, we really don't have much down the road except development plan, setbacks and height and, that parking and screening and that kind of thing. But otherwise, that'll be a B2 zone of now 17.46 acres or whatever it is, and they can come back and do whatever redevelopment that they need to do to continue using their property.
Any other questions, comments, thoughts?
Yes, I have some comments, not
Sure,
necessarily questions.
please,
but-
Mr. Wiseman.
First of all, if we change, once the zone change is made, we will surely approve any development plans they have. That's just our history. So if we want to, that's one comment. Second comment is what I've said several times. I've grown corn on as little as 3 acres.
Yep.
So this is agriculturally viable. 6 acres of corn this year. This is what, 7? This
7,
is
yes, sir,
wonderful land. I would
7.5.
love to have had this 7 acres to grow my corn on this year. So that's, Michaela, I think, is right there. This is, the current zoning is legitimate. Back in 2013, I was on the board then. I don't remember how many others were, but
think you
I
and
was a
Steve.
major proponent for the zone change so that Bevins could build their thing there, their facility there. And the main reason was I thought Bevins needed to stay in Scott County. They're a major history of good citizenship here. Many of my fellow board members were against me because they said this would be a slippery slope if we opened this area up. And I soon came to realize they were right and I was probably wrong there. When the Sunbelt Rental applied for it, I realized that we had opened up a slippery slope, and what we are doing here tonight just confirms that as well. So I think, while I argued that we needed to make an exception for the agricultural benefit that Bevins Motors gave to the county, I think we ought to hold the line on that and not go further with it.
Thank you, Mr. Wiseman. Any other comments, thoughts, questions? Thank you, folks.
But I had a question for Charlie. What would have to happen right now for this to be approved as a conditional use? Right now, conditional uses are not allowed in the county, but they are in the city.
Conditional uses are appropriate in the county, but
Not for eight.
to do this in conjunction with Mead Tractor, that would be a commercial use, and there's no such animal as that. You can have a home occupation, things of that sort in the A1 zone, but you couldn't have a conditional use that allows you to do a business use, such as in conjunction with Mead Tractor. Plus, conditional uses can't take up the whole property. In fact, in the city, they're going to take up 300 square feet. You can have larger in the county just because you have wider spaces, but you still couldn't use 7 acres for a conditional use permit. So, no, this could not be done as conditional use. The only way it can be done is with a zone change that allows outdoor storage. And then you could do, well, you have to go to the Board of Adjustment for approval and any conditions such as screening and that sort of thing. But that's the only way this can be done.
Thank you, Charlie.
But we can't restrict, the zone change Mr. Langford talked about Tuesday.
And I don't know that question has ever been real clearly dealt with by the courts. But the only case I'm aware of that came close to that is they put some conditions on what the applicant could do after it was approved by, whether that was a county, I think it was a county also. And they appealed that. They got the zone change, but then they had all these conditions down the road that limited what they could do. And the court said, you should have thought of that before you gave them the zone change. So if you had concerns, you needed to deal with that before you granted the zone change, because once you grant the zone change, all zones are treated the same. B2 anywhere in the county is treated the same. A1, whatever it might be. And while it's not clear, well, they weren't talking about rezoning it if you ever stopped this use. I can't imagine this would be treated differently than what they were doing in that case. In that case, it's still good law, unless a court comes along and says, we've changed our mind, that is violative of something. So no, I don't believe we could do that. They could assure the board of that, but we could never enforce that. And of course, while we would certainly trust these fellows, we don't know what Mead's financial prospects are going to be. Obviously, he's incredibly successful, but that doesn't mean that he's going to. We can't deal with that, and we can't control that. So,
Thank you, Charlie. Any other questions, comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I'm repeating myself, but I want to make sure you understand that when I said Michaela agreed with her 90% of the time, maybe 10% not, we're into that 10% zone because we think that what we're trying to do here is proper under 1A, Part 1A, which says if the classification is no longer appropriate and the one you're proposing is appropriate, that is a basis, a legal basis, to grant the zone change. You understand what I'm saying? And we say it's not feasible, with all due respects to Mr. Wiseman, to farm 10 acres. As a matter of fact, 10 acres defined in the PVA office is a farm. Less than 10 acres is not a farm, and they tax you accordingly. So we feel that would be your basis. Part 1A, no longer appropriate to be used agriculturally or residentially, because who would want to farm it and who would want to build a house on it? But they do want to use it for storage, commercial storage. So we think that's a good basis.
Thank you, Mr. Langford.
Do you grandfather that with agriculture? They went from the Board of Adjustment.
Yeah, the only way anything is grandfathered is if it's in violation, actually, of the ordinance. So let's just say if they had a country store on it and it was agriculturally zoned, and it's been there for 10 years without enforcement against it, that's grandfathered in. Ag is the original use and classification for everything we've got. So it, I guess you might say, could never really be grandfathered in. Although I guess perhaps the Bradshaw farm, once upon a time, if it had been annexed and it stayed farming for 10 years, I guess you might say that would have been grandfathered in. But basically, that's the original. Everything else is what gets grandfathered generally.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? If not, we need to entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move we deny this request.
So I have a motion. Grab a separate sheet of paper.
Mr. Chairman, if I might suggest to Mr. Wiseman that, because we need a justification for whatever motion is made, and if you would then support that with adoption of staff report.
Actually, before we go to vote, we need to close the public hearing,
I think that's probably cleaner, yes, sir.
right? So let's close the public hearing. Now we can,
Okay, I move so in, for the reasons Michaela stated, the current zone is appropriate, and it will not fit with its 5-year plan.
so I've got a motion by Mr. Wiseman to decline ZMA-2019-43. Motion by Mr. Wiseman. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, so we've got a second by Mr. Caldwell. I'm sorry, Mr. Moran. Sorry, Byron. So we got by Mr. Moran, and we'll do a roll call. Well,
So if you vote
so if you
yay-
vote yes, the yes would be to decline. Thank you, Charlie. So we'll do a roll call. And again, a yes is to decline the application. Mr. Wiseman?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Moran?
Yes.
Mr. Mifflin?
No.
Mr. Vest?
No.
Mr. Stone?
No.
Mr. Caldwell?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
I vote yes, but I kind of like to say why. I wish that we had a way to allow some outdoor storage. Because I don't think 1 or 2 acres of additional storage there would be a big thing. But if we have to go completely to a B2 zone change, then that won't work.
And the chair votes no. So we're tied 4-4.
So that would be sent to the county without a recommendation. And then they would use our record, have their own hearing, whatever they choose to do from there.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So do they need to sign anything, Charlie, or no?
No, sir.
Nothing. All right. Thank you. Next on the agenda is Bluegrass Campground Preliminary Development. PDP-2019-45. Bluegrass Campground Preliminary Development Plan for 100 RV camping sites, water park, cabins, and other recreation facilities located at 269 Connector Road. Matt?
All right, thank you. Yes, as you mentioned, the application here is for a commercial development inside the city of Georgetown. It's 100, their application is for 100 RV camping sites, water park, cabins, and other recreational facilities. The location of the site is roughly at 269 Connector Road. The current zoning on the property is B2, which is our highway commercial zoning designation. The properties that surround the project site are zoned A1, which is our agricultural designation, B2, which I already mentioned, is our highway commercial, and R2, which is a medium density residential district. The site in question is a little over 21.5 acres. They are proposing to sort of phase the development. Phase 1 would be the RV camping sites. Phase 2 would be the water park, the recreation areas, and the cabins. And that would be split, as I have here, about 15.6 acres would be the camping, and the remainder of the 21.7 acres would be the more recreational uses in the cabins. Access to the project site is proposed from Connector Road. And looking here at the site, I've outlined it in blue here. You've got Paris Pike here in the interstate for reference. Connector Road comes up along this way, running north, and this is the site of their current RV dealership. You pass the storage units, and the entrance to the site would be up here along the north. At workshop, there was some question about how far this was from Old Oxford Road, and Old Oxford Road comes off up here. Going to the next slide. This is their preliminary development plan for phase 1 of the site. So just for orientation, we've got Connector Road that runs along the western side of the property here. Here at the northern side, the northernmost point is their proposed entrance. All the gray here is proposed to be paved to allow vehicular access through the site. The white larger areas here are where the proposed RV campsites would be. They do have landscaping islands located sort of in between to sort of provide a buffer between those sites as well as to meet some of our requirements. And they have several, they have a little park area here sort of in the center. The check-in would be up here near the entrance. And then they have at least preliminary proposed detention areas located here and here with a row of trees screening the property from Connector Road, as well as the storage units to the south and the agriculturally zoned property to the north. This area back in here is the storage units that are currently under construction, as well as an area that they've already had planned for RV parking, sort of a rental parking type situation on that site. As far as access to the site, as I lay out in the staff report, staff feels it would be appropriate for there to be turn lanes constructed on Connector Road, both left turn lanes and a right turn lane to allow vehicles to slow down to make that turn into the property. That's not shown on this plan. The applicant did provide a traffic study where their traffic engineer indicated that at least a left turn lane is warranted by the traffic volumes and the types of vehicles that would use this entrance. Staff would also like to see, as indicated in the conditions of approval, a second lane for exiting, so you could have one lane possibly for right turn traffic leaving the site, and then a separate lane for possibly straight through or straight through and left traffic leaving the site. As far as the landscaping and buffers that would be required for phase 1 of the development, I find that it does meet our regulations. There's it's more of a clerical issue. The area down here in the site statistics indicates an incorrect number as far as the interior landscaping that's being provided. There is plenty of area that could be classified as interior landscaping, so I'm not concerned that they are unable to meet those requirements. It's just a matter of clarifying that so that when we come to the final development plan, if this application is approved, that be taken care of. As far as pedestrian access, typically we would require a pedestrian connection along Connector Road as part of this application. The applicant has requested a waiver to that, citing topographical challenges as well as existing easements to public utilities that would have to be relocated or otherwise disturbed as part of the construction of any sidewalk in the site. So I did provide a little bit of an exhibit because I am supporting that waiver. I agree that there are some challenges to the site. So this is from our most recent pictometry data where I'm sure very hard to read. I looked at the slopes from the road to the property line at several points along there, and I'm sure some of you have had a chance to go out and drive along a Connector Road and really look at the issues with the rock wall there. And down here toward the south, I found that there's about an 18% difference if you calculate it as a straight slope, it would be about an 18% grade. Although we know that it doesn't do that if there's a little ditch and then there's a rock wall. And even up here in the more favorable conditions, it's about an 8% grade change if it had been a direct slope there as well. So I agree that a waiver would be appropriate to the sidewalk in this particular instance. The other waiver that would be associated with Phase 1 would be to allow the use of gravel. Gravel is typically not a permitted by right use in commercial or industrial development inside the city of Georgetown. The applicant is looking to be allowed to use gravel in the areas where the RVs would be parked. Initially, it sounds like they had looked into using grass pavers, but didn't feel that would be sufficient to support the weight of RVs, should they be parked there for a week or more. As far as the second phase of the development, it would use the same entrance. They have an access easement that would come down and provide access to this site. This is the parking area down here, designed more for your typical sized vehicles. They've got a series of cabins planned for sort of the northwest or northeast rather corner of that site. And then this is where the water park would be. And there's some other recreational facilities, basketball courts and tennis courts planned for this area as well. Before I get too far, the campground, the use as a campground and recreational facility did go before the Georgetown Board of Adjustment and receive approval back in October. So they have taken the appropriate steps to get the use approved by the Board of Adjustment. As far as the parking on this site, they are showing an appropriate amount. Once again, they're showing an appropriate amount of interior landscaping and canopy. There's one area here that would require a waiver, and that's this eastern boundary. The landscaping buffer we would typically have, right along that eastern property line. There's an existing driveway or a paved area that exists along that eastern boundary that I assume the dealership uses to possibly get vehicles to and from the storage area in the back. So they're not proposing to remove that, so they have proposed moving that landscaping buffer 30 feet to the east or to the west roughly, and I'm in support of that waiver as well. The southern property line here, we would ask that on the final development plan they provide 3-foot continuous planting or hedge or something along those lines to meet with to be in compliance with our VUA perimeter screening. I don't think the applicant has any issues with complying with that. And so the only other item, I guess to discuss would be the canopy requirements. So the application before you, by itself as a standalone project, does comply with our canopy requirements. The RV dealership, when it came before you for final development plan approval, it I guess in part complied with the canopy requirements. They were allowed to provide only 10% canopy at that time, with the understanding that when the remainder of the area for the dealership was developed, that they would provide the remaining balance to bring their site into compliance. So what I've done here is roughly drawn out this area with the white and orange hatching was roughly the area that was proposed initially as the RV dealership, both their initial phase and their secondary phase. And then this area that I've outlined in blue here, this is the phase 2 of their current proposal. So there is overlap there. And so I think it is appropriate that, with this application, especially when they look to develop phase 2, that they provide that canopy that was agreed upon when they received their final development plan approval for the dealership. I've got a copy of the conditions of approval here with the language singled out, where they agreed that future development of the remainder of the project site shall bring the total canopy coverage of the project site up to 20%. So I have no preference whether they put the trees on the phase 2 site of this development or if they put them on the dealership site. That part I have no preference on. It's just a matter of, are they willing to plant the trees to comply with that? So Sorry, yeah.
Just to clarify, are you saying that any trees that were not included in the dealership part will have to go in this second phase?
Or they can put them on the dealership site.
Right, one or the other. And
Yeah.
then going forward, it'll be in small increments as far as the canopy requirements on each one of those.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
I am recommending approval of the application with the three waivers that I mentioned. The sidewalk along Connector Road, shifting that eastern boundary landscaping buffer 30 feet, as well as allowing gravel on the site. There are 10 conditions of approval listed in the staff report. I believe the first 7 are very standard with all of our development plans. So I'll highlight conditions 8 through 10. Condition 8 deals with the canopy requirements that we were talking about previously. I just wanted to make sure that if this application is approved, that there's that understanding that they're still responsible for those conditions of approval that they agreed to previously. Condition 9, just to sort of clarify that we don't end up with that issue again going forward. I've specified that each phase of their development needs to independently comply with all of our regulations, parking, landscaping. All of them need to sort of be good as standalone developments, not putting any of those issues off to the future. And then the 10th condition deals with that entrance and how this property would interact with Connector Road. We think that it's appropriate that they construct left and right turn lanes for entrance into the property, as well as two lanes for exiting the property. And that's all that I have for now.
Any questions for Matt? Comments? Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
The applicant want to come up and speak?
Sure.
Page down.
All right. I'm Daniel Rayner with Urban Engineering. Bet you guys didn't think you'd see a plan that had a water park and RV campground and cabins right behind that. I think it's a pretty interesting plan. I guess to summarize, really we're in agreement with everything Matt has said. I just wanted to highlight a few things. I think the Bluegrass RV storage that was behind, let's see if I'm going the right way. That is up there. There already is RV storage and access from Connector Road to that. And that, according to Diane Zimmerman, the traffic engineer, at least one left turn is warranted, but we are in favor of putting left and right to help alleviate any conditions on Connector Road. As far as the grass pavers, we're in favor of his recommendation for the waiver, obviously, but we did want to put grass there. We just felt like, both with the weight of the RVs, but also the fact that grass would have a tough time even surviving, it wouldn't really do good to put grass pavers in there because it wouldn't have much of a chance. And as far as the mention to the canopy requirements, we actually have already worked on the phase 2 for the original. This is phase 1 and phase 2 of this section, but for the RV, there was a phase 1 and phase 2, and we just haven't submitted it yet. We already have phase 2 that has the remaining trees, and they will be on actually the dealership side portion, kind of right along here, just on this side. So we already have that laid out. We just haven't submitted the FDP for them for review. So we do plan to comply with all those landscape requirements on that.
That's actually on the south side. Matt mentioned moving them from the east side to the west side.
He mentioned these ones, moving these ones from the east side to the west side. And so we've proposed some trees for this phase 2 here, but for the phase 2 of this portion, we already have trees planned to be planted right along there.
So would the west side be that angled? Yep.
Right here,
To the
actually.
left, the little angled.
No, he's talking about the west side of the
West side of this road.
West side of the road?
Yeah, there's access
Gotcha,
right here.
gotcha. And we'll
so
be in
there's
compliance,
kind of
okay.
like a
That's
slope
fine.
here and the road right there.
I was thinking it was going to be the west side
Yeah.
of that
Of the
property. It's okay. Thank you for clarifying that.
I don't think I have anything else at the time, unless you guys have any questions for me.
I'm sure we will. Questions, comments?
whole area we see over on the left here, is that all phase one, or is that to be divided into 2 phases?
So this right here is phase 1.
So phase 2 will be up further up.
And this phase 2 is the one that's got the water park, the cabins. It's got, I think, a dog park, some basketball courts and recreational areas.
Now, where is the RV dealership now? Is it?
RV dealership is right down
Right in
here,
there,
probably.
okay.
And then this is a big open area that's for their kind of storage for their RVs.
How much will the property, because I did have a chance to drive by it, I didn't walk it, and I did notice the wall is pretty high. I mean, it's so, you know, sidewalk, I'd still want to see a sidewalk, but how much are you going to grade the property? Because that's a pretty big hill. And I
Yeah.
remember when the RV sales was built, they graded quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. So it will present plenty of challenges on that, but this right here kind of is the knob, the high spot.
Okay.
And so going between kind of each of these areas for parking RVs, there will be a kind of a tier step down, kind of going both ways to deal with that grade. And they're going to run into plenty of rock. We already know that.
So the playground and the gazebo and the fenced dog park on that little island, and it is hard to see from here, but
Yeah.
that's actually going to be kind of
That's kind of be up on the hill, yeah.
Okay. Traffic study. There was supposed to be a traffic study. Do we have that today? Because we talked
have
about
the-
that. You weren't there Tuesday, but we talked about having a traffic study here today.
We have it.
Do we have a copy of it? Because I know one of the things we talked about is potentially moving or having 2 entrances or 1 entrance to the storage. I think Mr. Vest pointed that out on Tuesday, where the current storage entrance is off a connector, but potentially having an entrance off of 460 instead of Connector Road, because Connector Road is truly a nightmare.
Well, we had some initial talks with actually Robert Baker from KYTC, and he actually said that putting that entrance on that road actually would probably be a worse idea because of the distance they have from turning off of the interstate to there. It shortens very quickly, and he didn't say that was completely off the table, but he said that was probably a worse idea, and it wasn't going to give us direction until we submitted for a permit where they would put their engineers to look at that access, but initially he wasn't in favor of that.
Would it make any more sense if Connector Road was an entrance only and we had one-way traffic and then everything exited at the other end of Connector? And
It may. We'd have to relook at the flow of the traffic, but I think they were more concerned with RVs coming out.
Coming off the interstate into.
coming off the interstate
Backing
into
up,
there.
yeah.
That's more of the
Right, I could see
concern.
that.
Yeah.
But then
I think you want some stacking distance.
exiting,
Yeah,
like
it
Steve
wouldn't
was
be-
saying, come through the dealership, because 99% of them are gonna turn right.
Mhm.
Very few are gonna be going to Paris.
Yeah.
They can go to the right to go to the interstate,
Yeah.
either north or south.
Yeah.
And I like Steven's idea, if you make that an entrance only on Connector Road, which is actually nice if you're driving a camper.
You got
'cause it's a
stacking
nice
distance.
quick in, you got some stacking distance. You make 460 and out, whether they turn left or right, like you said, probably, I bet 90% will turn right off of there.
Oh, exactly.
Because they're gonna hit
Go to
to
the interstate.
your point and David's point, you know, you wanna be as close to the interstate as possible, and most people are gonna, they're not going to Paris, there's not much in Paris that, you know, they want it, well, there's not a campground, I should say.
few might.
Yeah, so a few might. Thank you. Sorry about that. But yeah, the majority of them are going to make that right out of 460 to get back on the interstate to go a couple hundred miles or whatever the case may be. So, yeah, that would, I think, alleviate probably a lot of the issues traffic-wise on Connector Road if you can make that an entrance only. I just don't know how you can do it with the, David, you're shaking your head. What are your thoughts?
You're having a truck and a camper 30 foot or bigger going down Connector. As bad as it is now, it's just gonna make matters worse.
You don't think you want anything going in down there?
Yeah,
Me
but-
personally, no, I wouldn't.
But I think making the left off 460 and there's going to be pretty tough, right? If you're going in that way.
Coming off the interstate right there.
You
If
come
you're
off the
heading-
interstate.
Heading north,
But you got a light.
coming
you
off
can use a light
interstate
to go
and then
down
have
here.
to
And then if this is nothing but
immediately turn
entrance,
left.
you can stack a lot of
David,
people in
if,
there.
if I may, I agree with you. As the conditions are now, it wouldn't be favorable to have it, but with adding that turning lane, that would get the traffic off of any continuing traffic. So that would actually alleviate that condition. As of now, RVs can still turn there, go to the storage, and there's no requirement that there be a turn lane.
So would you
this
actually
would
have then technically 4 lanes at the entrance? You'd have a lane of traffic coming to you. You'd have a center lane, then you'd have the other lane, and then you'd have a 4th lane to turn into the RV park?
deceleration lane.
It'd be 4. Well, if you had a center lane, because they're talking, they want to be able to have a left turn in if you're coming
coming
from,
back
say,
the
the
other way.
bank, and you're coming in from Walmart.
Yeah, but
You'd have a left turn lane.
You'd have 3 lanes that way and 3 lanes coming the other way.
Right, and then you'd have, he wants a right turn in lane, so that'd be 4. If you think about it. I don't know.
The deceleration lane, the right, the flip, to turn in to the right. If you're coming from 460.
Coming from the gas station, you got traffic coming this way. You got traffic going that way back to Walmart. And would they have like a turn lane so you could turn into the RV park? I think is what they're proposing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that'd be technically like having 4 lanes
Yeah.
for just a short period.
And see, here's
Right,
the entrance, so you don't need a lane over here.
Right, correct. Yeah, you don't need a lane over here.
So you're just having this one,
This to turn in.
okay, and this one's going straight
That's
through.
going straight through. And then this
Okay.
one for traffic coming from Walmart, they'd make a left turn in.
Okay.
They'd be able to,
But
so
this
they
would
could
still
sit
be
there and
Turn
stack
on-
up.
Okay, yeah.
And they
This
could
would
turn
still
it
be
back.
the entrance for the
It's
storage
still the entrance
area.
For the storage,
This
yeah.
side, you only have
And then we
3.
would make everything one way.
Yeah,
only have
I
going
mean,
out-
honestly, it would make
going out
things a
the
lot
front.
better because as now, like I said, I think there's,
But
I forget how many total spots out there are for the storage units up there for the RVs. So this will really help the current situation that's already there.
Mr. Chairman, are we actually considering adding this much more traffic to the area around Applebee's?
No.
Yes,
that we
well, we're
discussed-
talking about it.
That we discussed last time, and maybe not approving those things because
It's gonna be
of
on
the
the
traffic,
other
and
end.
now we're gonna throw this in on it?
It's
That makes
on
no
the
sense
other
That's
to me
where
at
we're
all.
meeting here.
But if it's not this, it could be a restaurant or something else that would bring even more traffic. This is probably
Yeah.
like,
Well, how many parking places?
100.
are here?
Frank, there's 100 parking spaces,
100 as opposed to.
but as far as the traffic trips generated,
let
statement
me-
from Diane, if you review there, the projected there's projected 7 turning vehicles at the entrance. Left turn volume would be warranted for the turn lane. For the mini storage units that are already there, they would generate 5 a.m. peak hour trips, so 3 entering and 2 exiting at the morning period, and then at the evening period another 5 entering and 4 exiting. For the actual when you're looking at the recreational vehicle use or special vehicles coming in here, according to the highway capacity manual, there'd only be about, reading off this. Applying the capacity manual passenger car equivalent for these recreational vehicles is about 1.1, which results in a volume of about 18. So there's not been very much volume even generated because people aren't coming in daily and leaving daily. When you're bringing in RVs, you're coming in, you're staying for a week, 2 weeks, maybe even a month. So you're not having traffic come in and out all the time, especially because you don't want to anyways. With an RV, you don't want to be pulling in and out somewhere all the time.
you might be leaving, I think a few more people would be leaving in a car probably, but
Yeah, maybe.
there'll
What
probably be
about
a
the
car
weekend
company.
campers? What about the guys that go in Friday night like we do and stay till Sunday morning?
No, there'll be all types of people. I mean, I think they'd prefer people staying longer, so they'd encourage people not to
Right.
to just stay for a few days. But
I just still say that the traffic non-connector is not a good deal.
yeah.
It's too dangerous, people fly up through there as hard as it is now to get out to the Shell station, I feel more comfortable with everything coming off 460.
Now, on this traffic study, it's only 2 pages, so I'm assuming it's a condensed version. It's talking about 21 peak AM in and out. I think it's 7, 8 in and 13 out, and then peak PM, 27 trips, 18 in and 9 out. But you've got 100 spaces. Are you really thinking you're only going to get a 20% vacancy?
Well, it's based off of the manual. I mean, you can't determine exactly.
And then on the back of it, before you flip that, it says right turn lane not warranted. Is that a right turn lane?
That's based on that's based on the volume. Right turn lane wouldn't be warranted, but like we said, we're in agreement to put it in because we know the traffic there is already.
Is it right lane out of your property or the right lane turning into the property?
It would be
in.
Yeah.
So even though we're talking about we'd like to have a right turn in, they're saying they're not gonna. They wouldn't.
Based on just the KYC manual, you wouldn't necessarily need one, but we realize the traffic on there, and we realize these are big vehicles, so we're totally in favor of doing that because they don't want their RVs to have any trouble getting in.
I always look at an RV similar to a semi truck. A lot of times you're gonna need to make that wide turn, and the more space you got to make that turn, probably the better off you are. Wouldn't a turn-in lane be better, David?
How many can you get in
3
check-in lane? If they were stacked up, one behind the other, how many could you get to Connector Road inside of the RV park?
It says 3.
3. What if you've got 5? The other 2's gonna be in the turning lane?
If this is entrance only, you can put, you got 2 lanes there plus you go 2 lanes wide, then you can have this 3rd lane there.
But what I'm saying is, if you got 3, you got 2 out in the turn lane. What if there's more to go? Then what?
Better move through quicker.
Yeah.
Just telling you, it's gonna be not a good situation.
Any other questions for the engineer,
Here's what I'm
Stephen?
saying.
What's the timeline between phase 1 and phase
You can
2?
use both of these lanes for their entrances.
I don't think they have a specific timeline. I
3 on
think
one, 3 on the
as
other.
any developer, they'd like to do it as quickly.
Let's try to have one person talking at a time. Sorry.
They'd probably like to do it as quick as they can, but they don't necessarily have a specific timeline.
Okay.
So now if you have Stephen, do you have one?
I was just pointing out
Okay.
that if this was strictly an entrance on this end, that right now we're showing 2.5 lanes here, 1 lane in, 1 lane out, and the 2nd lane here maybe halfway up. I think you could stack probably 7
3.
decent sized campers in there.
Coming in?
Yeah,
Coming in.
It says 3.
that's for stacking.
Says 3.
But there would be room to go around them. Technically, I mean, it's a large entrance. If we provided, like you were saying, Steve, if there's two lanes coming in, even RVs could go around them.
Commissioner Wiseman?
I was wondering if the phase 2, the water park, would be open to the general public?
The plan is for it to be for the RVs. They want it to be for the people that come and use the RV.
Okay, so there'd be no advantage to the town as such. Okay.
But they haven't. I mean, they don't have. That's just the plan
But
right now.
If this was strictly in, and you still had the other 2 lanes, you'd have room for 6 more.
Right.
Or at least 6 more. So then you'd have 9, 10.
Yes, Mr. Wiseman.
I'm on the side of Mr. Best here. I think if they add more traffic here after everything we've talked about before. Now, if they were just going to be at that one end of Connector Road, maybe, there'd be a sign saying no RVs beyond this point or something. But to add more congestion to that area we've been talking about for years.
Tuesday we talked about not having an entrance at all for the RV, but just to leave that the storage because it's already your entrance for storage. You'll need that there. What about bringing that entrance, even though it may seem like it's going to be tight, on the 460? Only.
That would be up to KYC to see if they'd allow us to make it an entrance only. We'd have to make sure they'd even allow us to put it as an entrance only there.
It'd be an entrance and an exit.
One thing that I'm hearing from both you two, which I think I agree with, is there's a lot of traffic on Connector Road, and you don't want to add any more traffic if you can. But the way I'm seeing it is you're getting an improvement of Connector Road for a condition that's already there that would help from the storage units that just went in across the street and from the storage units that are going in now. This is a way to actually get the improvement, some improvement to Connector Road, whereas if you don't do anything, it'll still remain like it is, and they'll still be able to drive RVs and turn it in. So at least how I'm seeing it is, I see it as improving the road.
We don't get many RVs on Connector Road today.
But you're going to with the storage.
Yes.
That's what he's saying.
We will through Bluegrass
Yes.
storage, yeah, because they have
Yeah.
the big units there.
And
I don't
just-
think there's storage units for RVs
There is.
in the one across
not
street
across the
from
street,
you.
no.
Yeah.
So what would you be doing? You'd be improving Connector Road then?
Yeah, they'd
How
be
many
putting.
lanes would it be?
They'd be putting if you're going from the interstate towards the Walmart area, there'd be a right turn lane in there, so cars could get off of the main road and allow cars to continue on. The harder turn to make would be coming from the Walmart area, turning left across traffic, but we'd be putting in a left turn lane for them to wait there, so they wouldn't have to they wouldn't back up traffic going back there, so cars would also be able to pass around them and it wouldn't stop traffic going either way.
There'd be 3 lanes from the south end of Connector up to your entrance.
Yeah. The only thing that complicates that is coming from the Walmart direction, you don't go very far before you get to the intersection of Old Oxford Road. And then that complicates things there as well.
And you sure don't want them to turn and go towards Applebee's if they come out that way.
Correct. That's a
And you
traffic
sure don't
nightmare.
want that.
That's why I thought it'd be better if it was entrance only on that end, but that way you would encourage them to come out up here,
And make the right turn usually.
make a right
Yeah.
turn on 460, and go down to Wendy's and turn
And
down
a right
Cherry
turn in
Blossom,
only
or
on
take a
Connector
left and
Road.
get on the interstate going south.
Mhm.
But I agree with Mr. Wiseman. We don't need to add any more traffic on the end down around Lowe's. It's terribly congested.
And we're not opposed to trying to make that an entrance only. It's just a matter of reviewing with KYTC.
I think if you did a right turn in only, and maybe even no left turn coming from Walmart, I don't know if that's feasible.
I don't think you can do
I
that.
don't think you could do that. Where are you gonna put the signs letting people know that?
They'd be putting like they did up in Oxford in front of Applebee's, those little pylons, and not let anybody turn in left there.
Yeah, but you've already gotten down there. You
That's
know,
where it-
so how do you
You'd
know
have to go
not
to the corner, make a left-hand turn towards
but
Paris, and then
that's-
go in that way.
That means you'd have to have two check-in points.
Yeah, I know. The traffic's terrible there.
But at least they're making an improvement by adding lanes going
Yeah.
both ways,
It would be-
which nobody else has done.
Can anybody remember how far it is from this entrance to
Oxford.
Old Oxford?
Matt had it on there.
200 feet, probably.
Be there?
That is.
That far.
About 200 to 300 feet, isn't it?
So maybe 100 yards.
At most.
You could stack a bunch of RVs in 100 yards there. If you had a left turn lane.
5.
Yeah.
And when some initial numbers she had thrown out, I don't know if it's in that report or not, was that a majority of the traffic is planned to come from the interstate side because not as many people are going to be coming
Right.
around town and coming back that way. So
Hopefully.
as
Well,
to
they
how
can come
much
off
it's hard
75 a couple different ways. You've got the 75 on the other side of, as a crow flies, the what's the flea market thing? You know, the movie theater. You come around that way by Walmart. It's 6 of one or half a dozen the other. If you come around the 460 side.
Well,
So
if you all would list your address as 460, then GPS will pick that up and route them onto 460 instead of Connector Road. Because that's what all RVers going by anymore. Is
Yeah, GPS.
got their GPS, and if it shows the entrance on Connector Road, that's where they're going to go to. Whereas if it's the other way,
But with their office being right there off Connector Road, that's probably the address they're going to use.
I'm just saying,
I hear you.
there's a way around it.
There is.
Moving right along.
Yes, moving right along. Anybody other comments, thoughts? If we do, I have gentlemen come on up and state your name and thank you, sir. Daniel, thanks.
Sorry, I hate being that guy that goes last. John Salyer, Falmouth Drive in Rocky Creek. Kind of in a double-edged sword here. I'm an avid camper. I love to go, but you know when it shows up next door to the subdivision, just got some questions. Full disclosure, I'm preparing to get a rental spot at Bluegrass RV. So I don't know. Are you Barry? By chance? No, sir. Sorry, man. Well, you know, so I'm trying to look at this as rationally as I can. You know, the first thought that popped into my mind was property value. I know that's a big what-if scenario. Is there any way that we could get an idea of that? I mean, is that a PVA question?
Probably a PVA question. We get every time somebody comes in, usually either for or against, they do bring up, hey, my property value is going to go down.
Right, and I get you. Again, I don't envy your all's position in a growing county. I don't even figuring out what's best for the whole has to be a crappy position to be in. So, good on you. One of the things I was concerned about is just what is going to be the draw of the campground based on the location so close to the interstate. When we go, I feel like the luxury, for instance, to compare it to the horse park, for instance, there's a little more privacy back there. To address the canopy issue, as a camper, I want to be near a tree. I have no desire to go park in gravel in wide open light. So there is concern that would have to come into Phase B. Why would that not just be an organic part of Phase A? You know what I mean? I know I can't get answers here. I'm just trying to
what I'm going to do
thought.
is I write down questions, and
Yeah.
then once everybody asks their questions, we'll bring the applicant back up to hopefully answer them. And hopefully Daniel and them and the crew there's writing down the questions so you can answer them here shortly.
Right. So one of the comments that was made, there was a lot of banter back and forth about what would be the best option for entrance, exit, yada, yada, yada. One of the comments that came up was the pylons, for instance, in front of Applebee's. Those I feel like are going to get knocked down, not necessarily by accident, but you know the theory of pulling a camper is stay straight, turn late. So when you're coming out of there, you know those are just going to have to be constantly replaced. I was wondering too. We mentioned the tree line on the eastern side, if I'm not mistaken. If you did reroute your trailers in and out of there, could that not pose a blind spot to an already slow-moving box of metal? I do, driving home, I work at Garth Elementary. Every day I run into this large left lane full of traffic turning onto Connector Road that sometimes backs up to the Winter Circle Motel. I can only imagine throwing a couple of 30-footers in there, plus the diesels that are pulling them. I feel like that's going to create a lot of problem on 460 Paris bound. One of the comments that was made too about if I had the money, I would love to stay a whole week every time we went camping. I feel like from my experience, we see a lot of weekenders. We see a lot of people popping in for a couple of days during the week. So I do feel like it may be a bit of a misconception when we're discussing people coming for the entire week. So add that into that Toyota shift change and the already backed up 460. I loved your question about the public access to the water park. One of the things I was concerned about, would that take away from instance like Suppaletta and the taxable benefit that we're able to generate here as Scott County and Georgetown? God, I feel like I'm talking so much. I swear I'm not trying to be a jerk.
You're asking good questions.
Just took notes, man. One of the things too, you know, I'm looking at 7 ovals. I'm not even sure which ones exactly are going to be the ones dedicated to campers. On the scale here, those look pretty narrow. Are we looking at pull-throughs? Are we looking at back end? How tight are these places going to be? What kind of accident ratio does that cause once we're in the campground? Because let's be honest, just because you own a camper and a truck doesn't mean that you're a skilled reverse driver. Guilty. I'll just lay it out there. Saying it for a friend. How about that? So one of the things too, I don't think, by the way, y'all kicked butt laying this out, but just one of the things I didn't hear was about the sewage. How is that going to work back there? I mean, I assume GMWSS is able to put in back there, but you know that's literally a lot of crap going down. Are they going to be able to sustain everything? You know, with all due respect to Mr. Baker at KYTC, the comment about would it be more conducive to have your entrance exit on connector or 460, you know, it seemed like he was even a little bit hesitant to answer that question. Is that because he just gave an answer to two bad options? You know, and then one of the things too, just to clarify, and I think it has been, we are talking about RVs and campers, not a modular home. Am I correct in saying that?
Correct.
Sorry. Again, I apologize. I feel like an idiot. The developments, even you're looking at Old Oxford down the road, they are blowing those subdivisions up. So, Mr. Vest, your statement about the concern of the traffic, unless Ball Home stops throwing up houses out there, I just see more houses coming back this way to generate more traffic. That is Old Oxford, right?
Yes.
Gotcha. Just on the theory, and I'm not trying to get political, but if you're looking at this on a product tax versus a consumption tax, how are we as the city of Georgetown ensuring that we are getting the consumption tax from these Ohioans, the Tennesseans they're running up here? You know what I mean? We don't want to just be able to put a tax on the campground. We want to make sure that we can generate revenue for them coming here and spending a week. Recreational facilities, I apologize, I wrote fast. If you consider too, beyond this, if you go back to what I would consider the Google map view, there's a considerable amount of farmland for sale continued down on Old Oxford. What's the end game for this guy? You know, 100 sites right now, are we talking about, has any discussion, and I'm sorry, I'll let you get to that, growth and expansion that way, that would just continue traffic for Old Oxford as well as connector. It really worries me that we're talking about pulling campers in off 75 primarily on an exit that we don't have, a northbound exit. I know your alternate route would be to go to 460 toward the bypass near Wendy's, which, again, coming from Garth, I see as frequently accident prone, people hustling through there trying to catch that yellow light. I see a lot of air officers there quite a bit. You guys are throwing out some great terms that I have no flipping clue what they mean, a lot of alphanumeric stuff. Would somebody please explain what is a detention area? I thought that was a jail.
Usually detention, like water, to like
keep it from flooding
keep it from
off.
flood and detention.
Thank you very much. I'm pretty sure that takes care of everything. Guys, I appreciate your time.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then anybody else here to speak in favor or against? And then nobody? So if the applicant wants to come up and address most of those questions, if not all, you're more than welcome.
All right, I was writing fast. I think I got down all your questions. Sorry. What's your name? James?
Sure, I'm John. But
John.
Whatever. It's irrelevant.
I think all right, your first question, I think, was related to you like to go camping and you like to find places for trees. And as far as the answer to the canopy question, that canopy question was related to the original Bluegrass RV dealership that went in.
Yes, sir.
And they were granted a waiver to install the rest of their canopy coverage when the phase 2 got developed. That is still a condition that has to be met. These are two new phases, phase 1 and phase 2, and each of these two phases have to individually meet their requirements for the canopy. they still maintain the original canopy requirements that they still have yet to finish installing. So they cannot develop these RV lots without installing, or not RV lots, this bluegrass campground without installing the required canopy.
Yes, sir.
As far as I wanted to address the entrance only on Connector Road. That is definitely an option on the table. That would just require going back to the drawing board and looking at how that would work and flow through the site. So that is definitely on the table. That's not something that we're opposed to. We just have to look into that more. As far as I can't necessarily speak for the owners of how they plan to do the water park. I know from initial conversations that we've had with them, they've, I think, gone back and forth between making it only for the RVs or making it open to the public. I think for them, they just want to make sure that the people that come to the RV camp have plenty of availability to use the water park. I think if they saw that it would serve the community better or them even better, they would definitely open up to the community. I can't speak for them, so I don't know what they'll end up doing on that. As far as the size of those parking spaces for the RVs, there's 15-foot by 40-foot parking spaces and 15-foot by 50-foot parking spaces. And next to each one of those lots, there's a 15-foot width section, the full length, for your campfire or a table and a grassy area.
So is it a drive-through or really a pull in and a back out?
There are drive-throughs, and they're all drive-throughs. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
They're all drive-throughs.
Okay.
Well, it's between. So each one where we see the white areas, those are the hard to see on there.
Yeah.
Those are the campground areas. So those gray areas are the road, and so they would pull up and pull into one of those spots, and they could pull out to the road right in front of them. There's another. You can't see it. There's a smaller island area where the step is happening. That's not where the RVs are parking. It's hard to see on this map, but there's another strip where it actually steps down. It's kind of right there in that middle spot. There's a step on each one of these. So they could actually pull down this lane and then pull in and then pull out that lane. It's just hard to see on this size. As far as the sewage, there is multiple locations to tie into. Being this on a hill, we haven't gone through a full design. We had to formally submit a sewer availability request form. As far as we know now, there's the availability. Our initial thought is that this side will drain that way, this side will drain this way. We haven't finalized that, but there is a pump station here with some tap-on fees, and there's another pump station that was down here that they've been doing some work on that they're let's see. As far as your question on just future development, Ball Homes continue to build more homes and put more traffic on there. Well, they're not doing anything to connect the road to improve it. We'd be proposing to improve it at least. So even if, to say the least, there is more traffic not related to us, we would have improved that road and hopefully alleviated something to that others aren't required to do if they're building something off of Connector Road. So, and I'm not a tax guru or anything like that, but as far as people coming, and if they come to this Bluegrass RV campground and they want to stay here, they're going to have to pay Bluegrass RV, and they're a business within Georgetown, and they have to pay taxes. So, some way, shape, or form. And if they come and they go out to eat, they're going to go, spend it here. And did I miss any of your questions?
I think you got most of them. Oh, go ahead if you want to. Just come up to the microphone just so we can get you
I
on.
feel like we should Kenny and Dolly this Islands in the Sea or something if you want to go back. So I guess my canopy question, I understand what you're saying, but without a canopied parking section, what makes this place lucrative? And I know that's not something you can answer, and I know you're not Bluegrass. I'm not trying to be
Well, I think that's why they want to put a water park there.
Right.
I think the question was, what's the draw? I think was what your
Exactly.
question was.
I'm sorry. And I love living in Georgetown. I left Eastern Kentucky to come here because there's stuff here. There's nothing at home. So I'm pro-growth, and I don't want to come across like that at all. But I want to see things come in here that have an opportunity to generate a revenue for our community, so our public entities can continue to grow. This is a beautiful plan on paper, but when you put rubber to road, is this going to generate stuff to better? And that's theoretical. I had mentioned, you said the spots were 40 to 50 feet long, even making me more concerned as pulling approximately 30 feet, swinging out onto 460, stay straight, turn late. Even, have you ever pulled a camper? I'm not trying to be
I pulled a trailer.
Right, exactly. So just the awkwardness of the trailer itself. Yes, we may be expanding and having the opportunity to expand Connector Road. However, us as campers are pulling out of there slow when me as just driving a truck is not going down Connector slow. One of the statements you made was this is an opportunity to expand Connector, which is already horribly inept for what the population has now. Just basing Scott County's growth in current numbers, will what we do at it right now be conducive to Connector being successful in 10 years, or are we going to be sitting here having this discussion again? One of the things I completely agree that in theory people should go to restaurants. When I camp, I don't speak to anybody. I don't shower for a week. I cook in the camper. I get away because I don't want to go out.
Yeah.
So that's just, thanks man, I'm sorry.
No, I agree with you, especially when I go camping. I might not go here just because I like to go to the gorge. But these guys sell RVs. They know what people with RVs like to do, and I guess they think this will be a good place to put an RV campground. And I think that's partly due to they're trying to create something that's fun, with the whole water park idea and cabins and put that in. I did want to paint a picture for you. So there's Bluegrass RV dealership. They have RVs that, if you've seen behind it, they've got a lot of RVs already parked back there that come and go as they sell. People come, buy them, and leave. They also have mini storage units as well as storage for RVs in the back, which they can go out on Connector Road as much as they want right now. There's no limitation to that. Technically, they could even come from Connector Road and come all the way through to the dealership or leave there. There is a road that goes back there. So as of now, they could. This would only help that, is what I'm saying. This 100 parking spaces isn't going to generate that many additional trips to where it's actually going to alleviate the trips that are already there based on the development that's already happened. And I think it will help future development. Now, RVs are just bigger cars or larger vehicles, but without the turn lanes, I think it would be a bad idea.
Definitely.
The fact that we have turn lanes really is going to help.
Comments, thoughts, questions? I'm going to try to keep us going. Just, again, my own 2 cents for what it's worth. Having that entrance on the Connector Road and exit, making a left-hand turn out of this facility is going to be tough. Making a right-hand turn out of it's not going to be as bad sending them towards Walmart. It definitely, per Commissioner Vest's comment, it's not going to help traffic. It's going to be a nightmare. Having the left-hand turn in from the Walmart direction is not bad because you'll have some people come off the interstate. Personally, though, I would love to see, if you're going to have that, to Mr. Commissioner Smith's idea or point, entrance only on Connector Road, exit and entrance off of 460. I think that'd really be a nice, in my own opinion, that might be the only way I'd even consider approving this thing.
Yeah.
Because this way, at least you have an entrance only on Connector Road. They can come in, whether it's from Walmart, whether it's from the interstate off of 460, they can all come in that way. But to dump that traffic back on the Connector Road at all, now storage is one thing. You can leave, maybe you might have 2 separate gates, who knows? One for storage and one for the RV to turn in. But then I think to let everybody exit only and entrance off of 460, now it might not be the best entrance at 460 because I can't remember who said it. That's kind of a quick pull into off once you get off the expressway. So, if they want to enter that way, maybe not a bad idea, but I think exiting out of 460 only would be probably the only way you'll get my vote.
Yeah, and we're not opposed to looking at that option.
So would you want to possibly postpone it till you get us that plan? Because, I don't think you want to tell us, yes, we'll do it tonight, and then if we approve it, you may not
I think
have
without
any.
having more talks even with KYTC and seeing if they have any reason to not allow us to do that, we couldn't just say, yes, we're not opposed to doing it. We'd have to just look in to see if there's any restrictions from that standpoint.
So at this point, we probably aren't ready to even vote, is what you'd probably want to think or say,
Yeah.
correct? I'm open for comments, tables, or whatever you want to do.
Yeah, I don't think we have enough information yet. I think we've still got a lot of questions to answer, and I would not be opposed to postponing or tabling this. Which way should it go, Joe or Charlie?
Just continue it.
Just continue it?
Continue it next month,
Yeah.
and ask the applicant, and staff too, for that matter, to make
I'd like a
contact
little
with
more of a
district.
comprehensive traffic study. I thought what we got was pretty minuscule.
Yeah,
What happens right now, he is correct. If you, certain times of the day, if you're going east on 460, if you're sitting on the interstate bridge,
It backs up.
that traffic that's trying to turn
Really
left on
bad.
Connector Road it stacks up so deep that it's out into traffic on the bridge and beyond.
I've tried
Where-
pulling out of the dealership.
And that's without adding this to it.
Mr. Chairman, if I could ask one question, this is something I just simply don't know, but will District 7 tell them what they will approve, or do they need to submit approved plans to District 7 for District 7 to mark up like we do plans at P&Z? Because if he goes back and says, I've got nothing to show you, what will you approve? They, at least from past experience, and I may be wrong, they would say, come back when you got something. So if we don't take action, are they going to what are they going to review and approve?
Joe, do you think you could answer that better than I can?
Can District 7 make some recommendations?
They might be able to answer better, but I think they can at least look at feasible design.
Because we'd
based
have
on
to-
one entrance on
My thought is if you do the entrance off Connector Road, you make the right-in turn lane, you've got the middle lane and the road being widened, I think that'd be a pretty decent plan. Go ahead, Ben.
This is my opinion, but I think there's way more traffic on 460, and because the queues are so short, if you're out there in the afternoon, the traffic he's talking about, it backs way up down 460, backs all the way across the bridge, going the other way. I can't imagine trying to get an RV in and out of that 460 area.
Well, they
at
can
that
make the
time.
left-hand turn then
I-
and go in that way.
You're still backing up traffic
You're backing
in
it
a
up.
very short distance. So
It's backing up to windows anyway.
as bad as Connector Road is with these improvements, I think it is more desirable than trying to put everybody in the same spot at 460 in that corner where it's at now.
Are
So-
you saying,
In regards to KYTC, they would have to they would probably want to see a lot larger study. Of course, study's already been done for Bluegrass RVs, so they would take and plug numbers in. There would not be any improvements recommended at 460. I think
Correct.
there's nothing for them really to look at. There's already 5 lanes. You would be crossing 2 lanes of traffic down there instead of 1 on Connector Road. So that's my opinion.
So you're for
You got any
the
questions?
entrance on connector, is that correct? And
As
And-
opposed
Opposed to the
to it
460.
putting everybody on 460, I think that is the worst idea. So I know how bad this is. That's why we pretty much demanded that there be left turn lanes and a right turn lane getting people off. So that improves Connector Road. I don't know what the best improvement, if Connector Road was 4 lanes or had a suicide lane all the way down, that center lane all the way down. But I don't think the state's got any plans anytime soon to do that, to do any kind of widening there. They just surfaced everything. I think that's all they're going to do. And this is probably the best bet we're going to get for any improvements on Connector Road.
Do you think making a left-hand turn though out of Connector Road, that's going to be a fairly dangerous turn?
you may have.
Blossom Park's tough. I mean, I know it's a little more congested down there because when I'm left-hand turning out of Blossom Park off to Connector Road, it's
Most people's gonna
pray
drive
and
by.
peel, pray and peel.
It is not going to be good. There may be at times, there may be 3 of these backed up, 4 of them, 5 of them. I don't
You don't
I
think
know.
you don't think this would work better if it was entrance only at Connector Road?
I don't.
Because this, to me, I think
I don't-
I picture them coming from Walmart off the interstate that direction and left-hand turning in, which makes sense. And you'll have that turn-in lane. If they come off 75 from 460, they'll have the right turn-in lane. But making a left-hand turn out of there is going to be difficult. And I think making that right-hand turn towards Walmart is just more traffic on Connector Road. And that's why.
Yes.
You're talking about the traffic coming in, but if we're talking about exit traffic on 460, where they're all turning right,
Most.
90% of them.
You can't turn right when that traffic is backed up all the way to Rocky Creek. That's
right.
I mean, somebody's going to have to let
can't
you.
get out. Somebody
Is
has
there
to
a
let
lot of
you in.
traffic up to Rocky Creek? Okay.
Backs up
I've
both
been
ways.
stopped at Rocky Creek before
Every-
coming back
Have
from
you
Paris.
really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't
Yeah,
realize there was
several-
that much
Several
traffic.
cycles to get out.
Does it back up towards Rocky Creek in the mornings?
Yes.
Okay.
We have to go to Eastern, you have to wait for someone to let you.
I didn't realize there were that many homes in Rocky Creek. Is there 1,000 homes in Rocky
That's
Creek,
what I
Ben?
felt it was interesting for Rocky Creek to be zoned as R2. By the time you put in the subdivision behind Rocky Creek, how many, Cross Park, am I saying that correctly? That's well, but I mean, that's a whole different set of development back there. But Mr. Solskin, just to, am I saying that right?
Yeah, that's fine. That was
Yeah,
great.
all right,
Thank you.
I got it.
Close enough.
Just
That's good.
to express concern about an entry off of 460, I do want to pose too, I'm guilty of it, but keep in mind, right in front of Fat Cats and Valero, your lanes combine. And we have a lot of friends that like to gas and gun and try to get in
Right.
there. Trailers don't stop fast.
Right.
And, but when you do, cars behind you, yeah.
It's going to be tough.
The traffic report was
If you want to come up and speak, come on up and you got to give us your name and your address.
Anne Marie Webb, I actually live in Rocky Creek. The traffic report that was done that you all have, does it show the peak times of Toyota? Does it show the accident reports?
It's a very condensed 4-page.
Does it?
She did the previous study for Bluegrass RV
Okay.
lots, and so she knew what was already there, so she was able to reference that, and that's why it was a short.
Yeah, we
But
need
does
the
it
we need the
show-
bigger version next month.
Does it show Planet Fitness since it's got added? Does it show the pylons that have already been added at the intersection at Applebee's?
It doesn't show hardly anything.
Yeah, because I mean, you've got Starbucks there that backs up. You've got there's
It's
no
a
lights.
nightmare. I
Yeah.
understand.
Excuse me, your name, please?
Anne Marie Webb.
Webb?
Mhm.
And
Yes.
do you swear or affirm what you just said, the truth, best for your information, believe?
I do. I do.
Thank you. Do we want to? We talked about tabling it or continuing it. Go ahead. Oh, go ahead.
I think what they're trying to do is, I don't have a problem against the RV park. I mean, I think it's a good thing. It's gonna generate money for the community. I'm a little worried about the traffic. That's just personal.
So, I mean, I think I hear that the best thing would be to just postpone until next month. But I do want to point out, I think, again, what Ben said. I mean, it doesn't look like the state's going to improve this road anytime soon. And it seems like there's a whole lot of problems, and only more traffic's getting added. So if you're looking to try and, in some way, shape, or form, provide a better access to what's already there, this would be a way to do it, because continuing to develop subdivisions elsewhere are going to spit more traffic on there, and they don't have to do any improvements on that road. So.
Thank you. I need a motion to. Oh,
I have a general point of order.
yes, sir.
Perhaps this question would be for Charlie. Organizations I belong to in the past, when we vote, the chairman only votes in the case of a tie.
That's not the case here.
That's not, we have separate parliamentary procedures here.
Yeah, some organizations, you have in effect a chair who's ex officio and they don't have a vote except in a tie. This you do not. Chair's a full member like everybody else.
Okay, so at some point, we adopted a separate set of.
That's the way it was
procedure.
formed originally. The statute sets it up. We have
The
members,
statute
period.
sets it up, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wiseman. All right, any other questions, comments?
Do we need to give any direction as to what we want accomplished before we come back at the next meeting?
You can, before we go to vote, sure.
But is it, I mean.
If we're gonna continue this, I wanna make sure that we.
That's what I'm asking is, if he goes in front, is it gonna provide us any further information?
You would like a more in-depth traffic study, and we can provide that. We can continue our conversation with Robert Baker and see if he can meet us on site and give us any more information.
I think maybe a
on that.
solution to the traffic, and I don't know if there is one. But that might be something to think about. So traffic and a solution to the traffic.
The staff, do you all feel like that District 7 KYTC will get you an answer in the next month as to what they would recommend as far as the traffic flow, or think that's, is a month reasonable?
What's the question, though?
The question is, what would they recommend as far as entrances and exits, and
Well, we don't know.
or would they even make a recommendation?
Or to Charlie's point, is it let them draw something up, take it to Kentucky Department of Transportation?
If I may just follow that up, at least what I was thinking when I asked that question, because it just seems to me that they think it needs to be designed and all here, then they'll either approve it or deny it. They're not going to design it for you. But it seems to me that if, for example, the commission approved this tonight but made an additional condition that when it comes back, they want state's review of it, they want a review of whatever configuration or updated traffic, whatever that might be, then when they come back with that, with the final, they've got to have state approval with whatever that may be. They've got to have the updated traffic information. They've got to have at least explored these other options. At that point, and in fact, the chair's already let them know that you may not get your vote, or they may not get your vote, if you don't provide something like this. Then they come back with it. They've got their approvals, they've got their reviews, they've got their traffic studies, and they either go up or down. Whereas if you just pass it to the next time, the state may say, well, that's not our job, because they've got other things that they've got to review, and they've got plans they've got to review, and I just don't see them reviewing something that doesn't have concrete plans in front of them.
They don't make those decisions. There's an entrance there. People have a right to use the entrance. If they want to propose improvements that we are requiring, then they are going to make sure those improvements meet
their standards,
state regulations.
Right.
On 460, they probably wouldn't require anything. They said, well, you got an existing entrance, do it.
Use it.
We would have to tell them what we want, and then they would have to go to 460. I don't know what to tell them on 460. There is no room for improvement. There's no room at all for anything.
I think to Mr. Mifflin's point, probably 90% of the traffic that pulls out on 460 is going to go right.
I'll speak to the traffic study. This site, that is the max. This site generates, I think you'll see on the front, 10 vehicles peak per hour. Our requirements for a traffic study are typically 100 vehicles per hour. So this is a tenth of what's normally required. So that's what they're looking
Those
at.
100 vehicles are about 15 to 20 feet long, and we're talking about vehicles that are 40 to 50 feet long.
And they threw some of that. They threw that out, and they said that would raise the equivalent to 18 vehicles per hour. I think is
stacking distance
what
is
the calculation
considerably
is.
more.
So that's why they have the equivalents in those standards. So you get the equivalent as it would be in cars, and it still didn't come down.
So if they did a traffic study for the Bluegrass RV, maybe instead of doing it, I mean, you don't want to do a brand new one, can they update it just to give us a little more depth?
What do you want it to tell you, though? What's the question that we're trying to get out
What
of
I
it?
don't see, Ben, on those 4 pages that we got is really any factual information. There's 10 cars per hour, whatever the number is, 8 in, 13 out. But it just doesn't have any meat to it, Ben. I mean, it's, a lot of times some of these presents, it was floating back and forth. Did I grab it by accident? It's right here. Isn't that it?
Is it under me?
Yeah,
I probably got it.
But they're going to come to us and say, what questions do you want answered? As far as the capacity on Connector Road, are they gonna impact capacity? They're gonna raise, they're gonna try to get 11 or 18 equivalent vehicles per hour, additional on and off during the peak hour. Is it bad? Do you want the level of service coming out of their entrance? I mean, that's probably gonna be an F if
Right.
you had my guess. So does that make this business fail? And is that a reason for denial? I'm not sure.
Well, and maybe it's not going to DOT to get the answers. We're just asking Bluegrass RV to look at other options, and they can do that and come back to us, and maybe they can run it by DOT, and they say we're not looking at that, or yes, we can. But all we're doing right now is asking Bluegrass RV to look at other options for.
I mean, I think
entrance
Charlie
and
said it
egress,
could be
or-
less, maybe less, instead of 100 spaces, maybe 50. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is.
Well, and again, I'm certainly no traffic anything. I just hustle through it like everybody else. But if our standard is 100 and the equivalent based on accepted expert documentation is it's 18, then they've already given us more than we can require. If the state's going to approve what we require or deny it, if that's the case, we need to approve something, even if it's with a condition but we want you to review these other options before you come back for a final. Because if we don't do anything, they've not made any progress. They don't really know where they're going. The state doesn't really have anything to approve. And we really haven't given them direction.
Right.
We've got to give them direction, and we've got to give staff direction. And then everybody can work, hopefully, in the same
Yeah.
to the same point.
And it's a preliminary to.
And this is what the preliminary does is it gives them a baseline, but that's why the additional conditions go in. But we want you to review a different way of handling the traffic. We want to take care of, as well, primarily Connector Road. Are these improvements going to make an improvement there? Should it be shared, with 460? And I got to admit, I've been stuck on 460 a few times, and I don't go there often. But coming back from Paris, it's several times a day, I've been caught as far down as Rocky Creek. But they can come back with some discussions as to how much improvement that will be. And maybe then the state's got something to approve and say yay or nay, or we need the stacking lanes longer. I don't know. But I think we need to give them something to go on.
That's
And
the
that
one
is
question.
information that the state will help as part of this. Well, how long do these lanes need to be and that kind of thing. But I completely agree that I would not want to put, if I had a business, I wouldn't want to put it there, and it's going to be terrible for people getting in and out. And I completely agree with that, but all I can do is recommend, and we said they need a left turn lane, they need a right turn lane getting in, and
But on the
that's where
flip
we're at.
side of that, is this going to generate a lot less trips than any other commercial use?
Yeah, I don't.
How many restaurants and things can you put in this huge a site and come up with only 18 trips an hour?
Right. Yeah. So, all right. Well, I need a motion or something, because I'd like to go home.
Sorry, if I could- one more thing, I promise.
We'll give you 2 seconds. No, come on up.
Hello,
You're
guys.
fine.
It's me again. First of all, I appreciate your willingness to dialogue. This is good stuff. Second of all, just something that hit me from the camp. When you mentioned peak hours, campgrounds have check-in, check-out times. Your check-in time's usually approximately between 3 and 4 o'clock, which seems to be that power hour right there on 460. So just something else that Bluegrass, if they do move forward in this entity, that they want to be considered of as well. I'm officially done. I bid you.
I'm just giving you grief. Sorry. Thank you.
Oh, man, I deserve it.
Thank you, John.
That's true. You can help a lot of that just by your check-in and check-out times.
Yes, sir.
It seems like all the traffic studies in the world are not going to alleviate the situation that we all know exists. And I think we ought to vote based on what we know the situation is, because I can't see any way.
You can
it could be
take it to any
significantly
type of
improved.
vote you want to make or recommend. So,
Well, I wasn't prepared to actually make a motion. I was just
Sounded like you
I
wanted
could do
to,
that,
Frank.
of course, so.
Well, again, a motion, the table's open to make a motion to do whatever we
Charlie.
want.
I'd like to see us voted up or down as it is.
I got a question for you. Is there a way to?
You don't think we
like
need to
you were
think on
recommend-
this for-
Sorry.
Nobody feels like they would have any more clarity if they mulled this over for a month and look at the situation a little closer out there.
I'm not opposed to that, but I don't see it being any different.
Like anything, I mean, we're open to do whatever the commission would like to do, whether it's postpone, approve, deny. Somebody make a motion and we'll.
I don't think it would be fair to kick this can down the road a couple of months, but I don't think there's anything wrong with thinking it over and we make a decision next month's meeting.
I will then make a motion to continue Bluegrass RV's proposal.
So it'd be a continue, not a postpone, Charlie?
Yeah, it'd be a
Continue.
continue.
Okay.
But I would suggest you specify some things that need to be reviewed during that time so that can be brought back.
That they need to look at the traffic of entrance and exit through the campground.
So I've got a motion by Mr. Mifflin.
Second.
We've got a second by Mr. Smith. So this will be, and I'll take a roll call. This will be to continue till next month. So a yes would be to continue till next month. And a no would be maybe you want to vote differently. That's open as well. So Mr. Wiseman.
No.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
To continue to next month. Mr. Caldwell.
Yes.
Mr. Vest.
Yes.
And again, a yes is to continue next month. Mr. Mifflin.
Yes.
Mr. Moran.
Yes.
Mr. Stone.
Yes.
And Mr. Solsky. I'll say no. So it passes to continue to next month.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nothing to sign. We're all set. Anything else, Joe? Matt, you're.
Wait, my agenda doesn't say anything else, Mr. Chair.
It's not on the agenda.
No, this will be very, very. I wanted to invite the commissioners. We have an opportunity or two opportunities for some training hours. I'll be setting up the TV at the Planning Commission office for two webinars. One will be on November 22nd from 1 p.m. to 2:30. That'll be on housing, and then there will be another one on December 6th, also from 1 p.m. to 2:30. And that one will be on sustainability.
Can you email those to all of us?
Yeah, I can
And
send
that would probably be the
certainly
best
send
in
that.
this way.
What was
We'll
that, November 22nd, and what was the second
November
date?
22nd and December 6th. They're both Fridays. Yeah.
And both about 1:30 in the afternoon? did you say?
1 to 2:30, so it's an hour and a half each time.
1 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
With that being said, motion to adjourn or adjourn. There you go. Yes.